thought we'd start off by just giving a quick introduction and background to ESG. Then we'll move on to our solutions and an overview of the solutions that we've just launched, as well as discussing the SGS approach to sustainability. And then, as mentioned previously, we will move on to the Q&A session. So please, again, a quick reminder to please add your questions in the chat function at any stage through the presentation. So we're going to start off with a quick definition of ESG, but before I do that, I'm going to give an oversight of the ESG activities that SGS has been undertaking for quite some time. Although we're launching today our suite of ESG assurance solutions, we actually believe that we've been providing many of these services to our clients for quite some time. As you can see, we believe that we have over 25 years of experience in this arena. It started out probably in the early 1990s when we launched the Green Dove Award, which was an environmental management system standard back in 1992. Since then, we've been at the forefront of the development of the SA 8000 certification program and associated training. We were one of the first companies to be approved in the UK for the carbon emissions trading scheme, as was. And in the early part of this century, we were part of the development committee for the AA 1000 framework, which has gone on to become the key framework in sustainability reporting for companies. These achievements are obviously something of which we're very proud. But what we have seen throughout this time is an evolution of market requirements. Both customers and investors have now an increasing voice that are changing the behaviors of companies, and we need to be ready to meet those requirements as they evolve. As supply chains have become increasingly international and global, there has been a change in expectations around and risk around social and ethical challenges, as well as the impact on the environmental elements being increasingly well known and researched. These are, as I said, issues for both investors and customers, and companies are needing to react and ensure that they are at the forefront of demonstrating to those stakeholders that they are managing these risks more effectively. So given that ESG is still a relatively new concept, it can mean many things to many different people. And therefore it is important at this stage that we are clear as to what we are talking about. I'm going to apologize for reading, but I think it's important at this stage to give a clear definition of how SGS sees the environmental, social, and governance criteria. Environmental, social, and governance criteria are a set of standards for a company's operations that socially conscious investors use to screen potential investments. Environmental criteria consider how a company performs as a steward of nature. Social criteria examine how it manages relationships with employees, suppliers, customers, and the communities where it operates. Governance deals with a company's leadership, executive pay, audits, internal controls, and shareholder rights, as well as issues, for example, diversity. Our ESG solutions aim to develop a functional system for companies to mitigate and reduce their risks, manage their existing portfolio, and achieve ESG goals using a portfolio of holistic solutions that cross the value chain. What we're saying here is that we are beginning to look at the application of these standards to ESG towards the financial community. As companies, whether listed or not, increasingly become concerned about the reputation of their brand and the need to protect that brand. Investment companies need to make sure that they are managing the companies within their portfolio are managing these risks effectively, otherwise it can impact upon the valuation of that investment, as we have seen with a number of examples in recent months across the world. So, as these risks emerge, companies and investors are increasingly changing their behaviors and the transparency of their activities to better engage stakeholders in to show how they are managing these risks. 96% of the companies, of the world's largest 250 companies, now report on sustainability performance. As you can see, there is a trend towards investors prioritizing companies with strong ESG performance as part of their portfolios. And there is now $40.5 trillion worth of assets under ESG managed criteria. And this is growing at 15% per year. And I would imagine that over the coming months, coming years, that trend is going to increase at a faster rate. The biggest challenge we get at the moment is in the ratings agencies, where this is a fast-growing market, as you can see, at 25%, but it is still relatively immature. There are a number of newcomers into this sector, and although it's quite a large market, there are no existing standards, there is no consistency of reporting and baselines for measuring these ratings, and therefore we believe that this is an opportunity in the market to provide additional due diligence to enhance the value of those ratings. So as I just mentioned, companies and investors alike are changing their behaviors in order to better demonstrate to stakeholders that they are performing, or their portfolio investments are performing in a strong ESG compliant manner. Of the three groups, there are specific requirements relating to their specific circumstances. The corporations need to demonstrate that they are meeting reporting requirements. Ratings agencies need to improve the value and quality of what they are doing. And the green finance providers and investors need to optimize their investments and assets with proactive ESG impacts. So they're looking for companies in which to invest that can demonstrate a positive ESG impact on the environment. This is still quite an immature market area, and common themes underlie these criteria. The absence of standardized regulations and guidelines, uncertainty about the future of regulations, inconsistent data and metrics against which they can be measured, inconsistent and incomparable ratings, and the qualities of the methodologies on which their ratings are based. This is where we believe SGS fits in, having a core service which can be adapted to meet those differing requirements, building on those 25 years of experience and subject matter expertise that we've outlined before. With that, I'm going to hand over to Rebecca Bowens to talk through the solutions that we've developed and are launching today. I'll come back and speak to you later on. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. In this section, I will present our framework of solutions around ESG assurance and give you an overview of all the different solutions that we've established to meet your needs in this area. Our SGS assurance solutions build on our experience and expertise in delivering ESG services for a wide range of clients that we've established over many years. We're serving with these solutions both our traditional corporate clients and also delivering new services for clients in the financial and investment sector. We've established 3 service categories under our assurance solutions portfolio, which we've described as Esg Verified, Esg Optimized, and Esg Certified. In summary, the Esg Verified service category includes services such as risk evaluation, due diligence, external verification, and assurance. Our Esg Optimized category includes diagnostics and advice on ESG strategy, management, performance, and disclosures, whilst our Esg Certified category includes an ESG certification solution for clients. ESG assurance solutions will generally start with an evaluation of ESG risk or materiality to enable our services to be tailored and focused on the most significant areas for any particular customer. This will be followed by an analytical stage where we will evaluate the client's activities and identify gaps and improvement opportunities. The focus of the specifics of this will depend on the service category selected. For a lot of organisations, it might be easier to start off with the output that they're looking for in order to work out exactly which solution is going to work for them. So looking at the outputs and the deliverables from each of these service categories, The verified service is going to produce a detailed report plus a statement. Optimized category will also produce a detailed report, but the added value there will be an action plan to enable opportunities for improvement to be implemented effectively. The certified option will incorporate not only a report detailing what we've seen, observed, and the findings and recommendations that we've come up with, but also a certificate that can be used to demonstrate externally the level of achievement. All of the service categories include in-depth reports, and these include detailed analysis of our findings. Our ESG assurance solutions go much further than a simple evaluation of compliance. For these services, the identification and analysis of material ESG risks will be a fundamental element. So taking each of our service categories, I want to go into a little bit more detail so that you can understand exactly what we're offering. We've got an extensive experience in verification services that we've built up over many years, in particular for corporate clients, conducting data verification and report assurance. And we've extended this service category into new areas to ensure additional services are available for all intended customer groups. The new services cover customers in the investment sector, such as ESG risk and due diligence audits, providing verification services for financial instruments such as green bonds, and this in particular will build on existing accredited verification services that we have already under the Climate Bond Initiative, and new and upcoming instruments that we're aware of, such as the UNEP Principles for Responsible Banking Assurance and the SDG Impact Assurance process, where we can build on those new and upcoming instruments to provide services to our corporate customers. I'm going to have a look at these in a bit more detail over the next few slides. So the first element of the ESG verified category that I wanted to go into a little bit more depth on was services around ESG risk evaluation and due diligence, which are primarily aimed at finance providers, investors, private equity, to understand the material ESG risks that are relevant to their investment and enable them to manage them accordingly. So SGS will be offering risk evaluation and due diligence services to those making investments and acquisitions. We'll use information on the sector, on the region, both internal and external information, to enable us to identify those material ESG risks. We'll do evaluation and analysis to enable us to identify gaps in current understanding of those risks and management of those risks in relation to strategy, management, operational performance, and even in supply chain, depending on the scope of each individual activity that we're undertaking. All of this will feed into our ability to deliver a detailed and in-depth ESG report, which will enable a client to realise those benefits that we've listed. Another service solution that I wanted to discuss in a bit more detail under the ESG verified category was that of ESG data verification and report assurance. These services are things that we've been offering for many years to corporate clients who are making ESG disclosures, either integrated into their annual reports, offering separate ESG or sustainability reports, or other public disclosures such as submissions to the CDP or ESG ratings agency questionnaires. So SGS offers assurance of ESG disclosures, looking at elements of accuracy, reliability, and quality of disclosed information and data to enable organisations to be able to demonstrate that their disclosures are reliable, trustworthy, to enable stakeholders to have confidence in that information. Our evaluation usually includes evaluating adherence to specific disclosure standards and guidance, such as GRI, SASB standards, the A1000 accountability principles, and more recently, the Task Force on Climate-related financial disclosures. Our second category of services under ESG assurance is our ESG optimized category, and I wanted to talk in a little bit of detail about a couple of these elements. So firstly, our services around ESG advisory and diagnostics, where we would include services for primarily corporate clients aimed at improving their processes and performance. So examples include evaluating ESG management to identify improvement areas, establish action plans for implementation of improvement, and specific areas might include looking at ESG materiality processes, stakeholder engagement, ESG strategy, establishment of ESG goals and targets. And all of these are enabling organisations to make significant improvements in their performance, potentially in terms of compliance, reducing operational risks and exposure to reputational risks. If organisations are able to build a firm strategy for ESG, then they can realise these benefits. The second element of our ESG optimised category of solutions that I wanted to discuss in a bit more detail was around Esg Disclosure Gap Analysis. Our solutions provide diagnostic analysis of ESG disclosures, for example, to enable organisations to improve their ESG ratings gradings. And this refers to a wide range of different types of criteria, such as CDP submissions, submissions for Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and a range of ESG ratings agency programs. We also will be expanding those criteria as new instruments, standards and regulations appear, such as the EU taxonomy and the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. The purpose of this type of service is to enable organisations to make sure that the appropriate and correct information and disclosures are being made with high quality data and information to enable external stakeholders to make appropriate judgments on their ESG performance. Our third ESG category of solutions is described as Esg Certified. This offers an overall ESG certification solution with a variety of options that are offered to cater for all different sorts of organisations, whatever their certification starting point. There is a lot of demand for an overall ESG certification standard. This currently doesn't exist globally, so our starting point is to conduct an ESG materiality profiling to identify the critical areas for certification. This would then be followed by a number of different options to enable organisations to build on existing certifications that they may already have. If they don't already have existing certifications, then to use the SGS ESG criteria to establish their own ESG management system certification under the ESG banner. The output from achievement of these different options is an SGS ESG certificate. Our criteria are based on a range of different ESG guidance that's available, and the idea behind this approach is to enable organisations to build on what they've got already in place, to fill in any gaps, and to be able to demonstrate externally that they are managing the most relevant ESG risks for their business in an appropriate manner. To complement all of our ESG assurance solutions, we are establishing training package options for ESG in conjunction with the SGS Academy. So the training packages will suit individual clients and the wider client community, and these will range from general ESG awareness through to more specific training on ESG reporting guidelines and standards. Courses can be delivered in a range of different formats, including both virtual and e-learning formats to suit organisations. And clients are interested in establishing training courses to suit their specific needs, to enable them to build up the awareness and competencies within their organisations to drive ESG performance and improve ESG performance going forwards. So that brings me to the end of the overview of our ESG assurance solutions package, and I want to pass over to Viviana and Niccolo for the next section where they'll be looking at a particular case study. Thank you.
Hello everyone. We are going to present a case study to you about our valuable framework to understand an organization's ESG performance and to identify the most relevant ESG strategic action to improve it. Just a few words about the three-step approach we applied, developed by SGS. The first step is to do an external context analysis, in particular through the identification of industry macro trends and main ESG risk and opportunities and relevant issues, and through the benchmarking to profile competitors according to these ESG relevant aspects, based on what they communicate in the market. The second step is to proceed with an internal context analysis to assess the company's positioning against the key ESG areas and specific industry macro trends through documentary review and interviews with management. The third step is to report results as well as the action recommended by SGS to the management to increase the ESG performance over time. Our case study concerns a leading international software company. Our assessment considered 10 ESG areas identified by industry macro trends. You can see them on the table on the right. And then the two dimensions of strategy and management with a PDCA approach. For the internal context analysis, we developed a specific checklist considering the most recognized ESG standards and identified industry macro trends. We consider 5 rating levels according to the level of compliance to each requirement we assess. For the external context analysis, each competitor was assessed on the basis of publicly available ESG information and data. We assign a rating from 1 to 5 to each competitor, considering its level of maturity on managing from a strategic and operational point of view the specific issues related to the 10 ESG relevant areas previously identified. At the end, we were able to create a benchmarking matrix where all the competitors were positioned. Let's have a look now at the internal assessment, following which we were able to assign our rating and then a position in the benchmarking matrix to the client.
The internal assessment was performed by involving key managers within the organization, such as the health and safety manager, the HR manager, sustainability manager, and so on. The SGS team assessed each single sustainability dimension, and we were then able to put a rating to each of it and create a matrix where the maturity levels of each dimension were showed, so the organization could understand where it performs better and where the major gaps stand in terms of what sustainability areas need to be improved. As a final step of the assessment, the SGS team prepared a very detailed report that was given to the organization, where we basically provided a feedback on each dimension that was assessed by reporting the ratings, of course, that were given for the strategic as well as the tactical areas. We also provided a feedback on the competitiveness of the dimension in terms of how relevant it is for the market, how competitors are performing on this dimension, and where the client stands, and whether or not it makes sense to improve the performance from a competitiveness overview. We also reported the key strengths of the organization, as well as a list of actionable suggestions for improving the organization's performance concerning this specific dimension. Some of these actions were given a high priority based on the knowledge of the SGS team, so that the organization can understand and can put these prioritized actions on the top of its agenda. In conclusion, our ESG assessment approach is a very valuable tool for organizations that want to understand their maturity level in terms of the ESG areas, as well as improving their overall sustainability performance. There are a number of benefits for using our framework. First of all, it provides not only a benchmarking of the performance of the organization with respect to its competitors, but we also provide strategic advice to the organization in terms of themes and actions that shall be pursued to increase the sustainability performance. Secondly, our assessment takes into consideration not only the external environment, which is the market and the key competitors, but also the internal dynamics of the organization. And we investigate them by conducting an in-depth analysis with key managers and documental review. Our assessment is based on the most famous and notorious standards and guidelines for sustainability, such as the ISO 26000 on corporate social responsibility, the ISO 2400 on sustainable procurement, and the PS 8001 on circular economy. But our checklists are highly customizable, which means that based on the key trends of each specific economic sector, we will add additional requirements to the checklist so it will fit perfectly with the profile of each single client. As we have seen, our final report will detail a list of actionable outcomes, actions that can be adopted by our clients to improve their sustainability performance.
Thank you, Nico. So to summarize, we believe that SGS could offer significant differentiators to this market through our experience in having delivered these programs for over 25 years, providing our clients with access to those subject matter experts wherever they may be located, in the 2,600 offices and the 89 countries in which we're located. And at the heart of everything that SGS does, it's about providing that consistency and quality of execution. We demonstrate that on all of our international accounts on a regular basis in ensuring that irrespective of location, the quality and consistency of output is the same throughout. And finally, the ESG services that we've outlined today can be integrated with any of the other SGS Group services that provide a unique blend and combination of solutions to our clients. With that, I think we'll move on to the questions and answer session.
Financial. Thank you for the presentation. I think we're ready now to start the Q&A session. We will go through the questions in order in which they have appeared on the list. We'll try and get through all of those wherever possible. I'm speaking at the moment. I'm Rebecca. I've been presenting today, and we've got the other presenters who are here also to respond to some of those questions which have come in. So to start with the first question, which I'm going to cover, that's come in, is what are the importance of ESG issues for non-IPO and non-financial industry organisations? So really for any organisation, although ESG is a terminology that's used very, very commonly within those spheres of finance industry and listed organisations, those same ESG issues, the risks, the gaps, the opportunities are relevant for any organisation to enable them through an increased understanding of what those risks are for them to improve their performance, improve their efficiency, to identify opportunities for improvement for their own company or even down through the supply chain. And what have been traditionally known as non-financial issues, really now most organisations have got a good understanding that they have potential financial consequences if those issues are not managed effectively. The next question is asking about different guidelines that might be used, and there are a wide range of guidelines for ESG, standard guidelines, recommendations, and it's one of the big challenges that organisations have got is how to manage that approach, and that's one of the things that we've been able to do with our historic experience in this field is make sure that what we're offering will focus on the guidelines that are relevant for an organisation in their particular location, in their particular sector, and the upcoming guidelines and recommendations and legal requirements. So we're combining these different things together to make sure that we're providing an overall offering that meets those needs of different organisations in different locations. We have a question around what a verification statement would look like. Would it be like a certificate? Generally speaking, verification statements are something that are published alongside disclosures around performance. So often in annual reports or sustainability reports, if the information has been verified, then that external independent verification statement goes alongside that information. It might not be used in public reporting, it might be used in other mechanisms as well, but anywhere that a company needs to have an external third party verify the accuracy, the reliability, or other information that's being presented to external stakeholders, then that's what that verification statement will be able to do. The next question is looking at certification and asking whether the SGS ESG certification is accredited or whether it's an internal SGS process. And so basically the SGS process that we're looking at is enabling alternative offerings depending on where a company is standing right now. So we're offering an SGS ESG certification, which is a non-accredited product. But in order to offer that widely, we are able, because we offer accredited certifications as well, to offer that in combination with accredited certifications. So the simple answer is that the overall ESG certification is non-accredited, but it might incorporate accredited certification as part of that process. There's a question around whether we can verify things via remote audit, and the simple answer is yes, that can be done to a degree. It really depends on the nature and the scope and the depth to which we're going. So there is a lot that can be done remotely via video conferencing and review of documentation and evidence that can be presented in that way. There are some things that are very difficult to verify remotely. So in general, there is likely to be a combination of those different approaches at various different times, but the detail would depend heavily on the nature and the scale of what we were carrying out. So the next question I'm going to hand over, I think, to Jonathan to answer this one, which is around providing the narrative around how we as SGS define ESG. Again, just a quick overview on that. Have we got Jonathan?
Rebecca, I'm not sure he's there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Neil,
okay,
would you like
it's Neil. Yeah,
you,
sure.
Neil.
Essentially, so yeah, sorry about that. Essentially, and again, I'll probably read, so please forgive me. The definition that we are using is that environmental, social, and governance criteria are a set of standards for a company's operations that socially conscious investors use to screen potential investments. So, just to, I guess, to put that in a different way, what we're seeing is that the finance community and other stakeholders are increasingly looking at those environmental, social, and governance criteria and performance measurements of an organization prior to deciding whether to invest in them, or whether they use that as part of their ongoing portfolio management of their investments. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. I'm sure we can send out the definition that we've used that's there on the slides. But I think this is a growing area where in the past, I guess it was called corporate social responsibility, and everybody was looking at that from a client perspective, and customers were increasingly expected to demonstrate to their clients, that organizations were increasingly expected to demonstrate to their clients that they were behaving in a corporately socially responsible manner. And I guess ESG is very much a take on that same corporate social responsibility definition, adding in the governance element, which is a newer element that's driven probably more by the financial stakeholders. So I'm sorry if that was a bit garbled, but I hope that makes sense. And as I say, we can probably just share that definition with you.
Thank you, Neil. I've got another question which I'll let you take as well. So the question is, what are the strengths that SGS has in ESG services?
Yeah, thanks. I think firstly, it's about that experience. And as I've just said, we've carried forward that CSR type experience and the sustainability experience as that's evolved. So bringing 25 years of experience in this ESG arena to our clients is probably a critical element. Providing that access, and over that 25 years, we've built up a lot of subject matter expertise globally and locally, and we can make that available to our clients. And then again, if you're a company based in Europe, say, and you're looking to understand the ESG performance of a stakeholder in Asia or in the US, then we can bring that subject matter expertise to those local delivery and local execution points, but ensuring that there is a consistency of delivery and quality across that process. So we have the people, we have the infrastructure in place to manage that global program with local delivery as required, but really it's about that access to subject matter experts, I would say.
Thank you, Neil. So the next question is an interesting one about whether we believe that ISO will be planning for an ESG management system standardization. So I just wanted to hand that question to Jonathan, who I believe has come back on the line now.
Should hopefully now be on the line. Yeah, sorry about that, Rebecca. So will ISO be going down this route? I imagine they will, but I also imagine it's quite a long way off. There's the guideline standards that exist already, and many organizations, including ourselves, offer a form of certification to that. It's not a management system standard. It's not meant to be used for certification purposes, but we can assess an organization against it. There's also things happening at a local level in some countries. We know of a standard being developed in China, for instance. And there's so many initiatives going on that sooner or later those will come together. We're certainly going to look at this through some of our trade organizations to try and push that as well. But I think it's a fair way off before we see an ISO formal standard in this area. I don't know if anybody else has any view on that.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think I would generally agree with you. You know, the ISO 26000 guidance standard has been around for 10 years and they've not moved yet to make it a certification standard. So it could well be quite a bit further down the line. The next question is around the difference of the B Corp certification versus SGS's ESG certification. And I think the key thing for us is that although there's potentially quite a lot of overlap and similarity, the key thing that we can do, because we're already a accredited certification body offering recognised certifications in a lot of areas that come under that ESG banner, we can offer a combined approach to utilise things that organisations are already doing, rather than having to start again with a whole new system. So I guess that's the biggest potential difference. There's a couple of questions now regarding training, asking about when ESG training will be available, and what will be provided as a result of that training. We've currently got our ESG awareness training course, which is due to be ready for a delivery out to clients by the beginning of June, based on that, we're working on an e-learning course and some high-level presentation type training as well. And then coming out of that, we'll then develop additional training courses to go alongside that in a similar way that we have for other types of subject areas through our SGS Academy. So that's definitely work in progress and hopefully quite soon. I'm just reading up the next couple of questions. So we've got some very specific questions that are based on specific countries, which I think we'll cover individually following on from this. We've got also some questions regarding partnerships with ratings agencies. So this is an interesting question. There are a lot of ratings agencies out there already who are offering services whereby they gather data and information about companies. They often all have their own different methodologies, some of which are not very widely publicised, so they're carried out internally, and come up with a scoring for different organisations based on their methodologies and based primarily on information and data that has been gathered from publicly available information, which is of variable quality and variable in terms of its ability to be directly comparable. So one of the challenges really is that the corporate organisations are getting many different requests for this sort of information from different sources, and there isn't one overall specific set of requirements that they're having to respond to, but it's quite varied, which takes a lot of work. And the other is that the recipients, I suppose the clients of these ratings agencies are using data and information that is variable in quality and comparability. So the usefulness of that information is potentially questionable. So there are possibilities to use the techniques that we've got and the experience that we've got to help improve the quality of the data that is being submitted by corporations, so we can work directly with corporations to help them improve the nature, the quality of that data and that performance information. And that's certainly something that we are offering through our ESG optimised services, particularly looking at gap assessments of of the disclosures that organisations already have. But there is also potential to work directly with ratings agencies to improve the quality of the information which they're using to undertake their analysis. So I think that's also something that we're very interested in doing. There's a question around the largest market for ESG services. Wonder if Neil, would you like to take that one? Which part of the world has the largest market? Neil, are you still on the call? No, I don't think he's on now.
So I'm feeling it. Do you want me to take that? Sorry, it's Jonathan.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah. Please go ahead, Jonathan.
So, in terms of the markets, obviously this is driven a lot in Europe from regulations, but also we see increasing volumes of increasing interest in Northeast Asia, where there's a lot of schemes at a local level that are being pushed forward, and across North America as well. That's becoming more important, and I would anticipate that stepping up quite quickly now. I can see today Biden's announced some very challenging climate targets, so I think it's likely we'll see much more activity in North America as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's lots and lots and lots of questions coming in, so I'm pretty sure we're not going to have time to cover all of them. So I just want to scroll down to the next one. There's some very specific questions about costings, which we can't really answer on this sort of call because it's very dependent on lots of different factors. Another question around the training. So just quickly, I can answer that question. The question is whether the training is available online. So the course that we're currently developing is going to be offered as both face-to-face and through a virtual instructor-led training. So it could be either option, because we obviously recognise that at the moment there are lots of places that where it's difficult to do face-to-face offerings. We've got a question around how we differentiate from the Big Four. I wonder whether I could pass that one on to Jonathan or Neil, whoever's still on the call.
Sorry, I can't actually see the question. What was it?
How do we differentiate our services from the Big Four?
Okay, yeah, fine. So, to me, quite apart from what Neil said in the presentation about how long we've been in this, it's about the very nature of what we do. So sure, the Big Four can talk to you about some of the things we've been talking about, but if you engage with SGS in terms of ESG and in terms of the broader sustainability picture, then we can provide a much greater breadth of service and support. It's not just about the ESG services we've talked today. Our labs can look at the materials and tell you about the sustainability of those, or where you're sourcing them, or how you dispose of them. And we can do that through your supply chain. So I think we have a much greater depth of knowledge and experience to bring to bear to this. And I think that's probably the most important point of diversification from the Big Four.
Sorry, Neil, I'm back now. Apologies. And yeah, I agree with what Jonathan just said.
Thank you. So we've got a few questions. I think that we've answered some of these already earlier, but for manufacturing companies, what tangible benefits can they have from these services? I feel like I covered that already earlier, but primarily aimed at helping them to understand what their key risks and opportunities are from an ESG perspective. And I'm just going to touch on a few other things that people have asked questions around, just to ensure that there's a good understanding that ESG covers an enormous range, really, of different issues, from the traditional environmental issues like climate change through to social issues, including internal issues around worker performance, worker conditions, but also external issues of community development and performance, right through to governance issues for the organisation to ensure that they're operating ethically. So in terms of most organisations, they are really going to benefit from having a good detailed understanding of what those potential risks are. And I think that one of the things to recognise is that it's not just all about risks, it's also about opportunities to make positive steps and to increase the positive contributions that organisations can make in environment, social and governance for the benefit not just of themselves but also wider benefit as well. We've got a question asking about some specific examples of work that we've done in the advisory field, and we presented today. Niccolo is here on this call, who was part of the presentation of the work that's been done in Italy, and I just wondered, Niccolo, whether you could give a summary of any of the other examples of similar sorts of work that you've been doing in Italy, if you're on the call still.
Yes. So, a lot of organizations from very different industries and economic sectors are increasingly asking for our support on basically measuring their level of maturity in terms of ESG performance. That's why we came up with this very detailed tool that will allow us to actually evaluate the company performance in terms of a set of dimensions for sustainability for ESG that we will tailor according to each specific profile of our clients. So this is what are we being increasingly asked to do. Measure, evaluate ESG performance, actually, yeah.
Thank you, Niccolo. Also, we've got other examples of work that we've been doing over the years, which is very linked into this, that we're building on. So, for example, we've been offering performance assessment relating to the guidance that is contained within ISO 26000 for many years. We've recently developed performance assessment evaluations against the TCFD, so the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and we're building in new and developing standards and guidance that organisations are asking for all the time. So, for example, we're making sure that we're on board with things like the SASB standards, which has become a requirement, for example, for listed companies in certain countries to be disclosing their performance around the elements that are contained within SASB standards that are relevant to their industry. We're coming to the end of the time that has been allotted. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments that they want to add before we finish.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that we, just to conclude the overview of our services, we are also increasingly delivering services connected to, for example, circular economy, which is a very interesting field for organizations, and also in relation to pretty new standards such as the ISO 20400 on sustainable procurement. So we are also directing our efforts in supporting customers on very specific areas for ESG, such as those I just mentioned.
Thank you, Nicolo. And that brings us to the end of the webcast today. Any questions that we didn't manage to answer live this afternoon, thank you for all the questions that have come in. We will get back to you following on from this session. So I just want to thank all of the presenters and questioners, so Neil, Jonathan, Viviana, who couldn't be with us today, and Nicolo. Thank you for your contributions today, and I look forward to hearing from people as they come in after this with more questions. I'm sure they'll arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.